Hey guys, I hope everybody's having a fantastic day, whether you're watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening. I'm glad you're all here. First thing I want to do is thank any of you who've made your way in to check out my knife, my EDC content. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. If you're so inclined and you haven't had a chance yet, if you'd please hit that subscribe button, bell notification icon, it would really help me out. And I want to give a special thank you and shout out to all the channel members. Thank you all so much. And today I wanted to do 5 knives fast, which is actually going to come in just a couple more than 5, but that's because we have a couple of duplicates and then we have a new addition. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to walk through the TRM knife collection and why I think the 5 knives I'm getting ready to show you, 6, maybe 7, are amongst the best USA made folding knives, i.e. fixed blades, that are available right now. So these are small batch manufactured pocket knives that are made out of Three Rivers Manufacturing, TRM knives, up in Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken. They initially made knife parts, titanium parts for the knife industry, and the first knife that came into my collection was this TRM Neutron. The Neutron is kind of a bug out size, I'm saying that without really knowing, a little bit shorter than bug out sized knife that I'd always kind of fancied because I'd seen that it was a very thin knife. You could change the scales out very easily, had a lot of different scale options. It's right at about 7 1/8 inches overall with a right at 3-inch blade and about a 4 1/8 inch handle, and the space to this choil from the lower part of the knife is right at 4 inches, which is this dimension right here. But what I loved about this knife was the look of it, the smooth simplicity. It's on washers, thumb stud actuated, 20 CV, and it's a tall flat ground blade. So when this knife came to me, I traded it with Brother Mateo, and it came with red micarta scales. So about 8 or 9 scale sets later, I finally settled on the titanium, which you'll see a theme here. I've paid forward a lot of the scales that I had beforehand, gifted them to people that are also TRM lovers. But again, maybe not your hard use cold steel Medford banger, but in terms of an EDC finesse cutter, I don't think there's any better on the market. The heat treat is fantastic. You've got this tumble stone washed tall flat ground 20 CV blade. Every piece and part of this knife, with the exception if I had carbon fiber, which is sourced out of Lithuania, is made in the USA. TRM is a fantastic organization. They have fantastic human beings that work there, and I'm just an absolute huge fan. So my first knife from TRM that came with the red micarta scales, because you can literally replace the scales by just replacing these 2 screws, replacing the clip in this screw, you don't have to get into the pivot, was this TRM Neutron. Fast forward, we came to the TRM Atom, which if you think about this knife, it is basically the Neutron bigger brother. So about as much smaller as the Neutron was than the bug out, the Atom is that much larger than the bug out. So if we're going to look at this overall, it's right about 8 1/16. The blade is going to be right under 3 1/2. The handle is going to be about 4 1/2, and where I like to grab it is going to be 4 1/2, which is that same forward choil on the flat of the scale, and you've got room to spare. So this knife uses the exact same blade geometry, same 20 CV, super slicey, thin package. This knife has had a lot of different scales as well. Settled on the titanium once I could afford those, because it just makes the knife feel so good. Titanium liner lock. Great reverse flick. Great thumb flick. If you're wondering why they've got these little rubber bands on them, is these studs are kind of hourglass shaped, so they don't really have a lot of grip. So TRM came out with these little rubber packs, these little, I guess you'd call them rubbers, little gasket packs that you can put around those studs, and it really just catches your finger. That's all that's there to do. I think they're kind of cool and different. But this is the TRM Atom, which is the bigger brother of the TRM Neutron. And then I picked up my first OG TRM Nerd. The TRM Nerd is around that same blade thickness, also a liner lock. Does not have thumb studs. Instead, it has this little TRM divot that allows you to pull it open, but it's a locking knife. 20 CV. Super, super slicey. Has that same forward finger choil, which, to me, when we look at this knife, because they upgraded that, guys, and we'll look at it here in a second. But if we look at this knife, say next to our Civivi Baby Banter, it's about the same size as the Baby Banter. Although it's going to be a considerably thinner package, both in blade stock and in blade thickness, or in handle thickness. So this little guy is going to come in right at 5.5 inches with 2 1/4 inch blade and a 3 1/4 inch handle. And where I grab the knife, you're, say, roughly 3 1/8, a little bit over 3 1/8. And I grab it right here. So the TRM Nerd, fantastic knife. I had several sets of scales for this. Kept the Python micarta, or the boa Python micarta, or boa micarta, I can't remember which, camouflage micarta. Kept these scales on it because I was going to pick up a set of titanium scales in the Nashville Blade Show last year, but I got a message from Hillary at TRM that they had a couple of MagnaCut little orphans that were on the garage sale site that already had the titanium scales. So this is the Holy Nerd. The Holy Nerd took the original Nerd, because I had a Holy Nerd with my micarta scales. I sold it to my buddy A to Z. But the Holy Nerd basically took this TRM divot, which you can thumb roll. You could even thumb flick it. I've even reverse finger flicked it a couple of times. But the hole makes it that much better. So TRM, instead of, fighting what people were modding, they came out and just made a Holy Nerd. They made this one in MagnaCut. Came with the titanium scales. It is super, super slicey. And I just love it. I mean, for a 5th pocket knife, or if you're going to the office and you don't need a hard use knife, you just need a little knife to open packages during the day, open mail, things like that. The TRM Nerd is just a stone cold winner. Love, love, love this little knife. It's one that I literally love so much. I bought 3 of them. I had a Holy Nerd in 20 CV. And instead of buying the scales for it, the one that I was able to get was the MagnaCut in the already titanium scales. So I let the 20 CV go to my buddy A to Z, who I think found a home for it on NAF sale. Then you've got the TRM Shadow, which is my only TRM, I guess up to this point, that didn't have titanium scales. But my buddy A to Z EDC went to the Nashville Blade Show with me, and I helped him procure this titanium Shadow, i.e. let him know it was there and drug him to the booth so he could get it, because I was going to get it, but I didn't have the cash at the time because I just bought the Nerd. But this is my buddy, A to Z EDC on Instagram. He's a local guy. I think you've heard that story before. Goes to Blade Show with me usually. Give him a follow. He let me bring this guy home to show because I wanted to show the titanium version of all of them. This is basically the exact same Shadow, except they have changed out the thumb studs. The thumb studs are much cooler. The pivot's a little bit different. I think the clip, the bar lock, all that's pretty much the same, the overall construction. But I can tell you, this knife feels like $1,000,000. It is so smooth. It is so well weighted in the hand. It's so balanced. The Shadow, don't get me wrong, I love my G10, and I haven't been able to justify getting my own titanium because this one works so well. However, this is a wonderful, wonderful pocket knife. This is probably the flagship, or at least the current flagship of the TRM line. It's 20 CV, beautifully ground, tall, flat ground blade that is, I mean, laser beam is an understatement. All the shadows are just therapeutic cutters, guys. I mean, I can't stop cutting on it till I cut my finger, so I don't want to do that. But the TRM Shadow is an absolute beauty. And again, I was glad that A to Z let me bring that home, check it out. Even though I've got the G10 Shadow, which is similar, thumb studs are different. Thumb studs are much better. I love these thumb studs. I think TRM press fits theirs, but same 20 CV blade, same slicey. Mine's not a terrible stepchild. It's just not nearly as cool as A to Z's because, again, that titanium is the bomb. Then, lo and behold, I got in on a three-way trade. This was a knife that's not in production anymore. This is a knife that I'd never had any interest in because when this knife was still available, I was not into slip joints. This is the TRM Atlas, and the Atlas is a slip joint. Yes, it's a true slip joint. I think I've shown this before, but for those of you who might not have seen, I'm going to grab a real quick T6. I'm going to pop this side off. And you'll be able to see, even though you don't have a solid steel spring, you've got these titanium liners, and you've got this little mechanism cut in both sides of the spring. So it's locked now, or slip jointed. When I go to give it to half stop, you notice this starts to travel. When it gets to half stop, it locks back into that notch. So now I've got a sturdy half stop knife. It's popped out again. You can see the lock coming around here where it closes. Snap shut. It's shut. Half stop, snaps back in. Fully opened, snaps back in. So that is, to me, a super cool little knife that I wish I'd gotten into when they were still manufacturing these, when you can still get a lot of different scales for them. These came with blue G10 scales, and they also came with these micarta scales. However, back in the day when I used to shop and used to just look this knife over, they had, you know, different types of scales, right? Just a really cool knife. I thought this was the first knife TRM manufactured, but if I'm not mistaken, they made a knife that you can sometimes find on the secondary called the Nomad. That was a locking knife. I'm not familiar with that, but I do know that they've got a couple of new knives coming out. One is the Bulldog, which is going to be a river lock, which is what this bar lock's called on the Shadows. It's going to be a river lock version of a little bit smaller knife, a little bit cooler, maybe not as big, but just a beautiful knife. It's on their website. It's going to be called the TRM Bulldog. It's going to be available. It does have a deployment hole instead of thumb studs at Blade Show. And then what I think is the pride and joy, and I'm praying that they make this knife in an EDC. This is the TRM Redline Fixed Blade. So this is, guys, a larger knife. This is a 5-inch blade. And a 9 1/4 inch knife with a handle that's right at about 4.5 inches. It does come with a lanyard and a place to tie the lanyard off. But the grip and the comfort of this G10 scale or handle in this full tang 20 CV construction of the blade is absolutely to die for. It feels fantastic. You guys have seen my, let me see if I can grab it, my test stick that I've been working on with this knife. And all I've done is stropped it a little bit, but all this has been dilly-dallied with this Redline Fixie. So it is still a therapeutic slicer. And guys, the thickness of this blade is different than any TRM I've ever experienced. Whoops, that was cutter air. I mean, this is a fixed blade slicing machine. Carving, feather sticking, you name it, machine. So if we look at the Shadow, which is probably my thickest, A to Z's thickest, it is much, much thicker. I mean, the thickness on this blade is going to come in at 0.1665, 1.660, but it comes down to a screaming sharp 0.0165 behind the edge. I mean, a beautiful, beautifully executed fixed blade. I love it. I love it so much. I'm begging anybody who sees this video that's at TRM, I'm begging them to make a little EDC, Redline EDC. Maybe, again, don't change anything about the look of that knife, except the proportions. And maybe make it 8 inches long, which is usually bigger than I carry. I would even say 7 to 8 inches long. If we could have a Redline Fixie EDC edition and a 7 to 8 inch knife with maybe a 3.5 inch blade, wow. This is so good, guys. I just unfortunately don't get a lot of time in my urban environment to carry a knife this size. I do on weekends, but man, I'd love it, love it, love it that much more, and there's nothing wrong with it in an EDC size. That's just me. I'm a small fixie guy. But guys, TRM, they are the USA manufacturer that I think sets the bar. They don't build the most beefy knife. They don't build maybe the most ornate, unique knife. They might not build the most, what would you call it, stick it through a car door knife. But what they do is they build beautifully executed cutting tools. They are some of the kindest people that I've ever met. And I say that from experiences I've had with them working on Knives Live when we were looking for people to donate gifts, working with people who've fallen on hard times and watched the things that they've done outside of anyone knowing. They don't want people to know. They just do kind things. They are good people, and they make beautiful knives. So that's my 5 and 5. Actually turned out to be 6. But TRMs, guys, I love them. All of them are in 20 CV, except my little Nerd, which is in MagnaCut, and they're offering several others of these in MagnaCut. Guys, thank you for watching the video. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Joe Isabella, for my Be Up guy. Be up, everybody. Please look out for the guy or gal to your left. Please look out for the guy or gal to your right. Please look out for each other. Go forward with love in your heart. Choose debate, not hate. I love you all. Peace.